Continuing production of The Open Mind has been made possible by grants from the Rosalind P. Walter Foundation, the Bluestein Family Foundation, Phyllis and Richard L. Gelb, the Malkin Fund, the Center for Educational Outreach and Innovation at Teachers College, Columbia University, and from the corporate community, Mutual of America and Rudolph Finn. I'm Richard Heffner, your host on The Open Mind, and this is the second of two programs with Dr. Vartan Gregorian, historian, educator, administrator, foundation chieftain, truly a man for all intellectual seasons, about whom a New Yorker profile discerningly wrote when he was at that historic institution. The New York Public Library houses many treasures, but few are as colorful, complex, enigmatic, civilized, and stimulating as Vartan Gregorian, its president and chief executive officer. Add a few more descriptives such as vital, brilliant, energizing, and one has a pretty good picture of my guest years before as a teacher at Stanford, at the University of Texas, at the University of Pennsylvania, then later as president of Brown University, and now as head of the prestigious Carnegie Corporation of New York. All of which, of course, is grist for our mill as we pick up now where we left off last time. And Dr. Gregorian, I know that you have spoken about the importance of being good ancestors. What do you mean?
Each of us can live a life for our own sake, or can live a life for the sake of our forefathers, mothers, our nation, our community, our society, and can live for the moment, or can live also for the future. Decide to live for the future because you believe in continuity of humanity, continuity of our nation and society. You have an obligation to be a good ancestor, because what we inherited from our ancestors puts a major obligation for us to live a better world than we inherited. That's why I says we have to be good ancestors. We have responsibility for our children, grandchildren. If we don't have children and grandchildren, for our mothers and fathers. If we don't have mothers and fathers, for our relatives. If we don't have relatives, our village, our farmer. We have obligations. Life is a series of opportunities, gratifications, along with major obligations. And that's why I was saying.
Obligations, responsibilities. This is an age, many people say, of dumbing down. Isn't it also an age when we have diminished our sense of obligation, diminished our sense of responsibility?
Yes, more or so, unconsciously and consciously we've done that, because the rhetoric and facts don't coincide always. People would like to live an instant gratification life. Everything is instant. Instant coffee, instant sex, instant this, instant that, and so forth. Sometimes I feel that comes out of sense of desperation, because there's no value system holding one's life together. People are desperate to spend it all, to live it all, because there's no future, there's no past, only present, as Orwell described, becomes an end in itself. That nihilism is one of the things that has scared me to come up with the notion that we have to be good ancestors. Because we're not just socioeconomic units, pleasure units. We're spiritual, complex, rational, social beings. with memories of thousands of years and imagination for infinite, and to confine all of that to instant something ephemeral, it's not been acceptable to me. So I always have stressed the fact that one has to live, as we discussed last time, a full life, fuller life, not one of just what I can do, but also what I cannot do for the sake of future.
What do you mean, what I cannot do?
Well, for example, we can exhaust all the energy of the world during one generation, to hell with next generation. We can cut all the trees, deforest everything, mine everything, because we like to live a better life for the next 30, 40 years. So what happens to our great-grandchildren? Who cares? What happens to the rest of humanity? Who cares? 1% of us may be exhausting 30% of human resources, so who cares? That kind of attitude is what I'm saying that will be destructive in a sense. Fulfilling, yes, you live a better life and a richer life and so forth, but you're postponing all the consequences to future generations, if there are future generations. That selfishness is one of the things that fascinated me when I came to America as freshman, because one of my favorite authors that my wife is fed up with is Alexis de Tocqueville. When he came to America in 1835 and wrote his classic book, Democracy in America, he made a fundamental observation which I thought combined the secular and the spiritual elements in our culture. He said in America, he coined the term individualism to describe the American character. Individualism was not self-centeredness, selfishness. His notion of individualism combined the public good and the private good. Possibility of your postponing personal gratification and personal fulfillment to also to put in the public context. He thought what made America great, that local communities helped each other, that individuals were able to rationalize that I can do this, but I cannot because of public good. That sometimes private good and public good can be coordinated, have to be coordinated. That impressed me very much, that element of individualism did not mean selfishness and personality cult and instant gratification. It meant decisions you had to take had social context, historical context, moral context. And that appealed to me. That's what I mean.
What happened to the America that he described all those years ago?
I think there's a division between our rhetoric, between religion and religiosity, between ethics and legality. We think anything is legal. Therefore, law has taken care of ethics.
Or law has taken care of ethics.
If it's legal, it's ethical. You can always find a loophole. You can always find a comma missing, a period missing, an exclamation missing in a paragraph and rationalize. We also, something else happened, I think, that we always have thought about rights but not obligations. A society is not about rights alone, it's also about obligations. And obligations are not only legal, but are moral, ethical, and other obligations. To take one course in law school about ethics, take one course in business school about ethics is not enough. It would be like taking one place I mentioned in the book, 50 Great Moments in Music by Milton Krause, opening lines, but you don't have to know the rest. But that's not enough. I mean, ethics is a daily phenomenon. It's not a course phenomenon. One has to practice, one has to understand. Somehow, those have become empty words now, or become formulaic in a sense. But the essence is what is important, that people believe in certain standards, certain moral taboos, certain ethical obligations. that some things you cannot do, not because the law prohibits, because it's not right to do.
Do you think that that awareness of what is right or not right to do can be achieved outside of the framework of religion?
Yes, I think our schools, literature, when you teach literature, literature is about ethical obligations. Literature is about human relations. Literature is love, about care, about illness, about aspirations, about tragedies. We teach in our society how to cope with success only. We never teach how to cope with adversity and failure and tragedy. I believe one's character is better demonstrated during times of tragedy and adversity than during times of success. Anybody can cope with success. But we don't teach how to cope with adversity when one's character, one's ancestral obligations, one's moral character is tested, one's values are tested. Because we are very afraid to discuss these issues openly in many ways. So we hide behind the law. This is country of laws, that's fine. But it's also a country of values. And values have to be taught, not preached, through literature, through history. I think history and literature are one of the best elements in which you can discuss about betrayal, about friendship, about love, about patriotism, about social obligation, about the poor, about rich, about justice, about equality, all about tolerance. They're all in literature. How you teach literature, how you teach history, how you teach to reflect the reality of our lives and our aspirations, the gap between our aspirations and our reality. I think we have put too much emphasis on selfishness. Individualism has become personality, and self-centeredness. The social element has receded. And that was not what the Tocqueville's America was supposed to be. Maybe it was idealistic even then. But I believe that is one of the things that ought to distinguish our society from the rest.
You feel that it ought to distinguish our society from the rest. What responsibility, and this may seem to be a strange question, what responsibility do the great foundations like the one that you had have to point us in that direction?
Well, one of the things we're doing in many ways, we have to fix our school systems. People cannot read and write. To preach them values is not enough. When 800,000 young men drop out of our high schools a year, that's wasted. We're trying to fix our higher education institutions, schools of education I mentioned. Very much involved about content of schools to deal with these kind of issues. Issues of learning, but also issues of content, curriculum. We're dealing with the issue of strengthening U.S. democracy. Voluntarism is prevalent in America among our youth. I don't believe our youth are selfish, ironically. I'll tell you this.
We teach them to be then.
We transform them to be selfish, because you have now hundreds of thousands of young men and women volunteer their summers, their evenings and others for Habitat for World, and travel abroad to build, to teach in elderly hostels and hospitals and community centers, but they don't participate in our political life. So we're engaged now with Campus Compact, which brings almost 1 million college students. We're studying how civic engagement should be very central to American educational system. We also are trying to reintroduce civics in our elementary and high schools and so forth, because civics has become a boring course rather than being made excited as a living mechanism to instruct us about our democracy and about our society, about our values. So we're trying to do this through Carnegie and various other foundations.
Do you think that I've discussed this matter of the teaching of civics with people who are very much aware of what we've lost by eliminating civics from the curriculum. Do you see this as successfully taking place?
Yes. Now, many governors, many educators, and many states are interested in reintroduction. As a matter of fact, I spent a wonderful weekend with 3 Supreme Court justices trying to convince them that they should write a textbook on civics.
Good luck.
Well, I don't give up as an educator. I never have given up on things that I want people to do for the sake of the nation. They would be very nice to pick up 18th, 19th, and 20th century cases, not current cases that they cannot pass judgment, and explain how their ancestors, their predecessors, handled moral dilemmas, such as Cherokees were pushed out, and Supreme Court ruled that they must not be moved. Andrew Jackson moved them out.
And
said, I don't care for what Supreme Court says. What are its consequences? One of the things I found out, one of these wonderful seminars Supreme Court justices gave, that then various states said, if the court does not come, we don't want to pay income tax or taxes. Then so, wait, this is a country of laws. So to show that you cannot be selfish, you cannot just be whimsical, this is country of responsibilities as well as rights. And Supreme Court therefore re-emerged again with all its might and respect. So why not, I said, put cases like this and others where real living elements, and then it relates to people's lives, their lives, against death penalty, let's say, in the past and current, moral debates. These are all moral issues, ethical issues. Whether in 21st century you can kill somebody in order to take revenge. Is it revenge, retribution? All those are ethical questions. If somebody reads Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, you can read as ethical document, not just as dead literature and for criticizing the structure of the sentences and so forth. But the point is, people are starved. There was a freshman in one of the speeches, maybe you have, they surveyed freshmen entering class to America, millions and millions of students. 75 to 80% said they want to go to college for meaning in their lives, to obtain some meaning, not just jobs, meaning. People are starved for meaning. If universities won't provide, if our society won't provide, esoteric religious sects will fill that vacuum, spiritual vacuum. And that's one of the reasons we have to reintroduce civics in the life of the structure of our society, not in terms of how many times you mention Malcolm X or Cesar Chavez or George Washington and so forth, but what are major issues that our nation has tackled in the past and should tackle in the future and has to deal with now?
You know, I can't think of anything more important than what you're talking about now. However, in the time left, I want to ask you a question that may seem way out. It has to do with the responsibilities, again, of foundations. When Peter Goldmark was head of the Rockefeller Foundation and was at this table, he spoke about all kinds of wonderful, to me, wonderful social programs. And then I asked him, what right does a foundation have to push in the direction that our political forces seem not to want to push in at the very same time? You deal with from your strength of tax-exempt monies, yet you at times fly in the face of the nation at large. Explain that to me. Rationalize it for me.
I will explain. I won't rationalize it.
Okay.
Foundations, first of all, let me tell you one thing which we may or may not know. The 1.4 million nonprofit organizations in the United States, that in my opinion are one of the major guardians and forces of American civic life, civil society, that they are the ones who provide a civil society for us. in a sense, by private initiative or local organized initiative, helping our hospitals, our museums, libraries, and others. Within that context, foundations have two roles. One is to fulfill their mission established by their founder. In our case, our founder, thank God, gave us a wonderful mission, international peace and creation and dissemination of knowledge.
What more could you want?
That's fine. I believe foundations can provide demonstration of projects, of thought, scholarship, and other, which may go against the trend of our times. And we have an obligation to do that in a free society. Free society is not about orthodoxy, it's also about heterodoxy. As a matter of fact, if you read our history, sometimes heterodoxy has become orthodoxy. So in this kind of situation, everybody cannot just play the same tune. You have to provide alternatives. You have to challenge. You can also support. It does not mean that all foundations have to challenge. But we are incubators of ideas. And then later we'll find oxygen tanks for them. We don't provide oxygen tanks. So I believe, for example, let me just mention, it's Carnegie Corporation that started Russian research centers at the height of Cold War because there was little knowledge about Soviet Union. Harvard, Columbia, everywhere, Stanford. It's us that bring Soviet generals and American generals together. Can you imagine State Department trying to do that and going before Congress to justify the expenses to bring Soviet generals to visit Pentagon and vice versa? But we thought, and now we're still doing until recently, generals knowing each other is as important as diplomats knowing each other. It's us who brought together Track 2, Soviet scientists and others. So we can play a very positive role without being part of the established orthodoxy. We have to be, what my hero John Gardner said, we have to be critical lovers and loving critics, but never indifferent. And that's my philosophy is. When it comes to democracy, when it comes to issues of war, peace, and so forth, we cannot be neutral.
And thus far, I gather you've been able to finesse the situation with an occasionally angry Congress.
Well, I don't know about Congress. I have not had any problems with Congress because we also have one other wonderful project, as a matter of fact, deals with Congress. Twice a year, under Aspen Institute, we're the only ones bringing Congress together, senators and congressmen, congressional leaders, who seldom have choice other than budget committees, conference committees to meet as co-equals to discuss, in this one case about education, in other case about Russia and the past Soviet Union. We brought Soviet experts, Soviet leadership, now Russian leadership, American leadership together for 5 days. No constituencies, no press, no lobbyists, to talk about one issue. Out of that came non-Lugar, non-proliferation initiative, which is a big deal to disarm Soviet nuclear weapons so they would not contaminate or fall in the bad hands or pollute all the water and so forth. So Title I, Title II came from this kind of thing when Republican and Democratic congressmen and senators have for 5 days, not their staff, chance to work. They said, my God, why can't we do something about it? So we're also helping Congress to talk to each other and to come up for it.
You're a great believer in conversation, aren't you?
I'm a great believer in teaching, learning. That's what we need, not just conversation, but great believer in learning. That Andrew Carnegie faith, that reason, learning, reason, logic, can provide common vocabulary for rational people to know their difference, to know true essence of their differences and see where they can meet on a common goal and common good, for common good.
Do you think, in the 2 minutes that we have left, that dialogue, that discussion, that learning, teaching, that this is a nation that embraces all those wonderful things more now than when you came here to this country?
Yes and no. The same people, they think everything has two sides only, from the left and from the right. Well, there are hundreds of nuances between those two extremes. There's the center, but nobody has defined the center. Center is not always middle of road. Sometimes middle of road can be one individual whose opinion varies from everybody, but he or she is right. In a sense, I like more diverse opinion, but also opinion and discussion, unless they result in action, sooner or later, they will defeat themselves. They become sources of rationalization rather than sources of exploration and action.
Are the other major foundations as much devoted to dialogue action as Carnegie?
I think so. As a matter of fact, we have formed an alliance, or alliance partnership is the better word, with Ford, Rockefeller, MacArthur, and we're helping, for example, African higher education. 14, 15, 16 African universities. We're revamping them, helping them. MacArthur, Ford, and us are working in Russian regional universities so that Russian intelligentsia will not lose its faith in their institutions, and on the top of it, their democracy. So we work together. The important thing for me is not what is to be, who's doing it, but what is to be done. That's the key central issue for us.
That's a good point, Vartan Gregorian, to end our programs, but thank you so much
for
joining me again on The Open Mind.
Thank you very much, and good luck to you.
Thanks. And thanks, too, to you in the audience. I hope you join us again next time, and if you would like a transcript of today's program, please send $4 in check or money order to the Open Mind, P.O. Box 7977, FDR Station, New York, New York 10150. Meanwhile, as an old friend used to say, good night and good luck. Continuing production of The Open Mind has been made possible by grants from the Rosalind P. Walter Foundation, the Bluestein Family Foundation, Phyllis and Richard L. Gelb, the Malkin Fund, the Center for Educational Outreach and Innovation at Teachers College, Columbia University, and from the corporate community, Mutual of America and Rudolph Finn.